Just going to wait a couple of minutes officially at 7 o'clock in case anybody's delayed. So. Okay, thank you everyone for coming and welcome to the Village of Altamont Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for November 26, 2024. Time now is 7 o'clock. At this point in time, let me just quickly point out we have emergency exits if necessary to your right, forward to my left, and on the far right over there in the corner, okay? At this time, would you be so kind, join me at the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This evening, we're going to hear from an applicant. This is a pre-concept meeting from 120 Park LLC regarding the pre-concept, I'll call it renovation, construction, alterations behind Orsini Park off of Park Avenue. So at this point in time, I would join you two. By all means. Okay.
Well, thank you, Board. I appreciate you having us tonight.
Let us know your name and...
Oh, my name is Jeff Thomas, and I'm also the owner of 120 Park Street. I own the property there. It's about 1.9 acres. It has the post office on it. It has the fire suppression company. That's a building that's owned. It also has the original train depot that was built in around 1863. And it has a lot of vacant land around it. And how we got here, how the catalyst of this project is simple. 3 or maybe even 4 years ago, the post office approached me. And I approached them at the same time. We wanted to do a renovation and make it look better. And they said, Jeff, we appreciate all your energy and everything you want to do. The post office, the current post office isn't big enough for us. So they said, do you have an idea of what we may do? And we looked at another building that I own, and that was just as small. Their existing building's about 2,700 square feet. So we talked about building a building behind the existing post office. And it's depicted, and our team will come up here, our engineers and architects will show you what we've developed. So they liked the idea because we would build a new building, the existing post office would stay intact and open, the new building would be fitted up, and they would immediately move without missing a day of operation, and that was important to them. They would open up the new post office. So it allows, we build a new post office, the existing post office stays in place, and they move over. And then we're left with what to do with the site, how to, we have an existing post office that's about 2,700 square foot, and we wanted to make it all work. And there's a lot of money in this project. It's a big project. So we have a lot of elements making everything work and preserving the old original train depot. So that's how we got here. We came up with the idea. The post office entered into, they gave us a draft lease. They're very interested. In fact, they've been pushing us, and they have a space deficiency problem, working with two of their agents, and they'd like it to happen soon because of their space problem. So put the team together. They're here. I'll start out with my site engineer, and I'll explain the site to you. And then we'll go to our, one of our architects to show you the building design. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I'm going to interrupt you 1 second because I screwed up. I want the board to introduce themselves so we know who's in attendance.
Simon Litton.
Lori Finley.
James Sullivan.
Bob Freeman.
Andrea Witham.
Charles Trout.
And Danny Ramirez, Chair. Thank you.
Good evening. Brett Steenberg, Steenberg Consulting Engineering. I'm the site engineer for the project. Jeff brought me on board a few months ago over the summer to take a look at this, and they had already started to develop concepts with the architect with what they were hoping to do. We got into it from a site engineering standpoint and took a look at it from parking, traffic circulation, stormwater management, all the things you would normally look at from a site design standpoint. Being the main focus being around redeveloping the post office to the new 6,000 square foot post office to be located along the railroad tracks, as you see here. The existing post office is located right about here with parking off the parcel on an adjacent parcel that is not controlled by the applicant. And as Jeff had stated, it would allow this post office to remain while this one was constructed and then make that transfer over. However, in doing this and creating, in talking with Jeff, and as you can see from these incredible renderings that Kotler Architecture has prepared, they wanted to keep the post office in keeping and in liking to, the beautiful architecture around the village of Altamont, Orzinski Park, not something that looks government institutional, but something that stands out and brings out the history of the train depot there, and still functions as it needs be for a post office. So the building itself, what Kotler Architects will come up and tell you about is what elements of design they put into the building that it makes it a project that I think hopefully the village can be proud of, but also as you would assume, it's going to inflate the cost of construction and that type of stuff more than what you would see with a typical government institution, government building. With that in mind, we're looking at developing this whole parcel, this whole nearly 2-acre parcel, I believe it's 1.86 acres, into a community center with 2 additional buildings. The building closest to Orzinski Park, Orsini Park, would be a mixed-use building, commercial on the first floor with 6 residential units above. The commercial space, we feel, and Jeff, who's very intimate with what's needed in the village of Altamont, office space, dental office, things like that, things that really would be beneficial to the community, and possibly some sort of coffee shops, eateries, things that people patronizing the park, patronizing the library, can stop in and grab a cup of coffee or a smoothie or something like that to go. They are looking at a kiosk, which you can see here on the site plan, but you see it even better on this rendering, which could be, utilized for various different uses similar to that, which could be patronized by the residents, being able to walk up and purchase a beverage or purchase, various different uses could be utilized in that. The second accessory building would be the multi-family building, just 6 multifamily units located on the south end of the property. Again, both of these buildings are, the intent is to help make this project feasible and make it feasible in a way that it's something that the village can be proud of having next to the, beautiful library and beautiful park. The design of the facility, we have 2 entrances into the main facility off of Park Avenue, both two-way ingress and egress, with parking internal to the site, around for the post office. For most of the multifamily would be in this location for this building, but for the post office located in front. The other thing I haven't pointed out is we're looking at developing a community center adjacent to the post office for a rental or use by nonprofits, trying to, I think Kotler could probably talk about this a little bit more, but utilizing some of the history of the existing depot as much as possible. And there isn't a lot there to be reused, but anything that can be reused from the existing depot, they're hoping to utilize for that community center that could be utilized by people within and not-for-profits within the community. And then Jeff is hoping, he'd really like to see possibly a couple of rail cars, whether it be cabooses or a locomotive engine, down off the end of the property, just again to tie into that, the railroad depot that was there in the historical aspect of the site. But as we review the site, we have determined that based upon all of the uses and the Village of Altamont Code, the site would require 48 parking spaces. We're providing 53 parking spaces plus an additional 8 parking spaces dedicated specifically for post office vehicles. So really, we have almost 13 excess parking spaces for the site. And one of the last ingress egress we're looking at, they have an easement through the library parking lot that is to connect this parcel. We would like to maintain and have that access as an ingress only to try to cut down on the amount of traffic. We would control that via signage and necking down the width of the road. So basically what you would see, what would normally be a 24-foot wide 2-lane road would be necked down to about 15, 16-foot wide to show you that, you're driving, you got a do not enter sign and a curb there and a tree there. You'd have to do some pretty fancy maneuvering to get around it and know that you're doing it and breaking the law and going down the one-way ingress into the site through the library parcel. We're proposing stormwater management. We've retained an area in the front of the site for a bioretention basin. That's what we've identified as probably the most efficient method to manage the stormwater on the site for a couple of reasons. One, it can be shallow, so it can pick up a lot of the surface runoff. But 2, and most importantly, this becomes a large landscaped area, which we feel is beneficial, rather than what you see for a lot of the stormwater management basins, which are holes in the ground filled with swampy water and cattails and reed grass. So these, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the bioretention basin, but usually they're only a foot and a half deep tops. They can only pond a maximum of 6 inches of water under the design manual. They're mulched and they're landscaped with plantings like willow trees, cypress trees, and other various smaller shrub type planting that help clarify the stormwater. It's actually one of DEC's preferred methods because of its ability to treat stormwater runoff and take a lot of the pollutants out of the stormwater before discharge into the surface water. That being noted, there is the existing stream channel which runs through the site. We still plan on maintaining the culvert between the two. Obviously, the post office building will span over that culvert, which will become something for the architects to work on how we're going to make sure that doesn't impact the design and the foundations and the footings, but that's something that basically the stream is going to continue to flow right underneath the post office. There is another stormwater channel which runs along this side of this building and exits out. We won't be impacting that at all from what it's currently how it's currently designed and functioning. At this point, I'd like to open it up to Derek from Kotler Architecture, who has prepared actually stuff that looks a whole lot better than my stuff around here for the architectural design and presentation of what you can expect this project to look like. Thank you.
Okay, just grab this. There we go.
You just gonna grab it?
Yep, thank you, Brett. So, as Brett alluded to, Derek Gribulis with Kotler Architecture. I actually have Sanal Amory with me here today because he's one of the lead designers as well.
I apologize. Introduce yourself. by name.
Derek Gribulis with Kotler Architecture.
Thank you.
We'll get into a little bit more detail about the buildings. Brett covered a lot of it, but we got 3 proposed buildings on the site. The first building I want to talk about is the mixed-use building, which is, you can see it right here, adjacent to the existing park. And these 2 renderings over here would be close-up views of this building, which is going to be the mixed-use building, calling it 2.5 stories. The first story would be the commercial level, and the upstairs would be apartments, the 1.5 stories upstairs. And you can see in these views that the commercial and the building really face the park, and they're really it's really helping activate the park even more with this public space right off of it. And the kiosk, the over here, would also help with that activation of public space, enhancing what's already there, making it even more open and friendly for pedestrians and being pedestrian-friendly project. And the style of architecture is based on a Victorian style, which you can see is a big presence of it around the village and the community. So we continue that style to integrate it seamlessly with what's already here. And we have a front canopy that would be covering the shop fronts, which would be a good opportunity for various services to come into the community, and that could be needed, that maybe you don't have, or maybe need to relocate or whatever. And then the cladding of the building is a style based on the Victorian, which is supposed to be a very vibrant, detailed cladding. We have a lot of ornate gable ends, cupolas, tower elements that would follow along with the style that we were going with there. And so this is the mixed-use building right here, right next to the park here. So it really is kind of playing off that park a lot. The next building would be the post office, which is more in the center of the project, along the rail tracks there. Let me see here. Yep, we got, okay, so these 2 renderings here, let me just move this over so you can see it a little bit better. Oh, okay. That's that wobbly one. Let me just put this over here. Thank you. Yeah. So the post office building, as you can see, is also along the same lines, Victorian style. Verticality is emphasized, board and batten siding, brick veneer, faux slate roof, gable dormers, things like that. And the entrance to the building would be centrally located for ease of use, and also to be efficient in with the flow of pedestrians in and out of the building. And you can see the post office required a little carport on the side for protected mail unloading and loading, which you can see right there. And then this is a shot of the existing post office. You guys have probably figured that out, but you can take a look at and compare kind of what we were thinking, and then what would be, kind of be replaced. And this is a aerial shot of the existing train depot, which would be, That's
the
not
back of
it?
the post office.
oh, okay,
And that's where the post office, new post office will be.
okay, sorry.
So we're trading two buildings, one for the existing post office gets traded for the mixed-use building, and the part of the tech building gets traded for the new post office. So we're taking down two buildings, putting up two.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So the last proposed building would be the apartment building in the southern portion of the property here, which would be a 6-unit apartment building, 3 units downstairs, 3 units upstairs. So this building is going to be featured with wraparound porches, towers, arched dormers, really leaning into the residential Victorian style on that one. The ground floor units will all meet accessibility. All these buildings will meet accessibility and life safety as mandated by New York State Code. So the project has been designed to be like a seamless integration into the community, and also to help enhance the existing public amenities you already have in place. And with that, I think I'll just open it up to, any questions you may have about the buildings. Just let me know. But I don't know, does anybody else want to speak?
All right, before you continue, one more addition, legal counsel, Mr. Hyde, last name? Clark, I apologize, who joined us this evening. Okay, thank you.
One thing I did want to highlight, based upon our review of the village code for the central business district, this is compliant with the code, with one exception which we will need variances for, and that's the 50-yard setback off of the rear property line, which you can see looking along the site plan, actually bisects the multifamily. The entire post office would be within it, and this building, the mixed-use building, would be entirely out of that 50-foot setback, so that would not require any variances, and the community center would be in it. That being said, the entire library is within that 50-foot setback as well. And we have, it blends well, and we feel there's good justification with the existing buildings that's there, as you see. The building on the left there, that's entirely within the 50-foot setback. The old depot obviously is within the 50-foot setback. And that's one thing that we would need to know, and one of the permits which we would need to obtain would be that area variance. And then I'd be happy to open it up to the board, and we can answer questions. Got the team here, so.
Well, this is a pre-concept meeting, and the information you give us is valuable. This is a commercial business district,
Correct.
not residential.
Please use the microphone.
My apologies, okay?
Thank you.
Not a problem. I forget myself. That this is a commercial business district, not residential. It's not mixed use. We don't have that in our village. So, off the top of my head, you're gonna need a petition, probably the board, for a zoning change on that.
Well, first of all, I want to say, first of all, I want to say that the village, I own a few mixed-use buildings within the village. The existing buildings are mixed use. The Park House, the Farm Tap and Tavern is mixed use. It has residential. All of the other municipalities throughout, if you go to Guilderland, if you go to Saratoga, Malta, they're all encouraging mixed use. It's brand new in there. They want mixed use. They want commercial use with residential. Otherwise, commerce doesn't work. You have to have people around. So it works really nice, and it's truly an element of the village. Now, I'm not sure if I think the building code references mixed use, and I'll bring Don, and we hired Don here too. So I'd like to discuss that.
My name's Don Cropsey, and I'm here with Jeff. When we looked at the project, we looked at the density control schedule and the uses listed. And under the density control schedule, the zoning law specifically talks about commercial and mixed-use buildings. And we designed the project based on that reference under the density control schedule. Now, the rest of the zoning law is silent on mixed-use buildings, and the zoning law may need to be updated to reference that, but the control schedule does reference mixed-use buildings. And we looked at this project as a mixed-use project.
So, just for purposes of this meeting, this board can't interpret the code.
I understand.
So I think what we will do is have it referred to our code enforcement officer to make a determination. And then based on that, we'll either come back here or discuss, whether or not it needs a variance or, as you mentioned, potentially a legislative amendment,
For the
whether or
code.
not that's to the code or if it's to the zoning district.
Right.
So I think, it's important to know kind of like where you're coming from as to why it's permitted.
Right.
But I think for purposes of this board, we'll limit it to just general workshop discussion.
Sure.
Overall development.
Sure. I did, when we brought the application in, I did review this with Chuck Hughes I assume he's still the building inspector at this point. Is he not?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Chuck and I did review it in the office.
Okay. I just think, so this board's clear.
Okay.
We'll have that and then we can move forward.
Okay.
And I think the one issue I saw initially, I, haven't gone through it completely, but I think the one issue is potentially the any dwelling units over 3 is considered multifamily dwelling. So that's, part of what we were looking at. But I'll take a look at what you referenced with the control, density control.
Right, that lists all the districts and all the setbacks. And for commercial and mixed-use buildings, there's a reference to the lot sizes. And that's where we picked up the mixed-use terminology.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
we'll get it sorted out with the codes officer and we can go from there.
And then the only other thing with the zoning, as Brett indicated, it looks like we would need a rear yard variance. And one of the purposes of the 50-foot setback in the rear was for parking. And the site has been designed to have all internal parking in front of the buildings, and the parking is screened from the street by another building, the proposed parking. The existing parking is obviously on the street, and that's not under the control of the developer here. So all our parking is screened, which I think was the intent of the 50-foot setback, and being located behind the buildings.
Do you have an estimate of what your impervious surface area is?
I think so.
We have a proposed lot coverage of 21% for the site, which is in compliance with the CBD zone. I could probably break that down into square footage for you and with a few pokes on the calculator, but it's 21%.
21% of the total area of the project
Of the parcel, yes,
is what?
is impervious area.
Okay.
Is that taken into account the structures as well as the parking lot?
I'd have to go back and take a look at that calculation, but we can get you that information. We'll make sure we have all of that documented closely. But what I'll do for the next time we meet is I'll have a table showing the impervious area for parking lot, impervious area for each structure and building, and how much of that takes up, and how that compares to the existing impervious, because there's a considerable amount of existing impervious area on the parcel currently.
Okay. Well, we're on the parking, my thought, because it's not on the print per se, How wide are the parking spaces that you calculated for?
How wide?
Wide,
They're 9 by 18s.
okay. And the replacement structure where the post office is, what's going to be the front of that building? Is that facing the street?
The structure?
No.
Oh,
Yes.
this structure here, that
What's going to be considered the face of that building?
that would be the clock tower side, which, looking at it, would be.
This side of the building is right here. It's facing the park.
Okay, because Don, I think in the code, the face of the building has to face the street. So however you work that out.
Faces.
Just give me a little feedback, okay?
Okay.
35520 under there, okay.
I have a question. If you look around the village, there are a lot of vacant properties, Key Bank and the restaurant. I assume you have some estimate that these units are going to be rented by, you wouldn't be doing this unless they were going to, do you have some market research or?
Well, I own the bank as well, and the restaurant. The restaurant, we've been working with certain interested parties, and we've been very selective. We just recently got an LOI that you'll be hearing about soon. That's a letter of intent, so there is somebody going in the restaurant. It's hard to get businesses into Altamont. This isn't, businesses really don't want to take a chance. So we need commerce. That's what makes it a village. Businesses are what makes it a village. But also we have restaurants. So we are attracting businesses now, some restaurants, which is nice. So we have dinner choices. One of the things that I've noticed is we have a huge shortage of apartments, rental units. I own 11 in Altamont, and when I put one up for a rent, immediately I get 40 calls. And they really don't, I have a one-bedroom, they're looking for a two-bedroom, they have kids. And I know I talked to this school principal last year, and they're suffering. They don't have enough children in the schools these days, from what I'm told. So they need some apartments. And they would be very interested in us having apartments to attract the kids. We'd also have customers for the businesses. So the apartments will rent very quickly. The commercial space is more of a challenge.
I have another question for you. On the structures, the air conditioning equipment, location. The exterior part of the air conditioning equipment, where would that be located? Because it would have to be,
Yes, I guess we're not that far along in terms of figuring out the mechanical systems just yet, but there are options that we could utilize to try to hide as much as we can. You just don't want to see them along the side of the building is what I'm hearing. So we could do things to try to minimize their visual impact on the project. We have to have further discussions in terms of like what systems we're going to employ here. And then what we will do is our best to basically hide them, and they may not be exterior, they might be interior mostly, but we have to come to that point in the future. But I will keep that in mind moving forward. I understand your concern.
Just, it's currently 2 tax lots, is that right?
Correct.
Is it owned by the same entity?
Yes. The same LLC, it's owned, single-member LLC is owned by 2 different LLCs,
Okay.
by the same member.
And is the, if approved, will the lots be merged?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the post office address. The 120 that you're citing on this project, is that the post office address that's there now, or is that a new address that's
I
coming?
think 120 is the parcel without the post office on it.
Okay.
It's the other parcel.
Anybody have any concerns? Just feedback for them to, they have to come back.
This land that's owned by somebody else, will that remain a parking lot or?
Okay.
Yeah.
That particular, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, that particular piece was not, Mr. Thomas was unable to obtain it. The post office, I believe, has a lease on that until 2028 for parking, at which point, they could choose to not, I'm not sure, it would have to be something between the post office and the property owner. Right now, we have no control over that land, so there's not much we can do with either removing or doing anything with that parking. Nor do we need that parking to make this project. We're not calculating any of that area into our parking counts.
I'm, excuse me, I'm interested in, we've got this creek running through the project. I understand it's called School Creek. I just learned that the other day. But a lot of communities are what they call daylighting streams, where that had been covered up, as this one is, and they're trying to open them up for a really better ecological function and aesthetic function as well. Putting a post office on top of that is going to preclude any kind of remediation of this creek for, what, another 40, 50 years. It concerns me. I understand why you're putting the building there, and certainly I understand the need for a new post office. On the other hand, it's part of our natural resources, and putting a building on top of it really degrades, keeps it degraded.
There's been a building on top of it for 150 years.
I realize that.
Yeah, I understand your concern. We did talk to the post office about possibly opening up some daylight, maybe with the glass panels over to, just to show it, which would be neat, but they didn't entertain it too well. The culvert that is made, it's made with Helderberg bluestone. It's beautiful, and it's very structurally sound. So, anyways, there's been a building over it. There's a building over it as we speak right now. The TEC fire extinguisher building's over it, and in order to use that site for a post office, we'd have to put the new post office over it. Train tracks go over it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But putting another new building on top of it precludes remediation for
I don't
many
know
years.
any landowner that would be able to open that up and make it a waterway. It's basically just a culvert. I know it's a stream, but it's a culvert. It seems to run heavy when it rains and in the spring, and sometimes it seems to not run at all. So I don't know. I don't think any property owner would open it up at any point in the future. That's, I can't imagine that happening. The building that is there could be renovated, and that could go on for a long time too. So those are our options.
Sort of connected to, Simon, your concern about the stream. 355-25 of the code talks about protection of stream banks and water bodies and a 100-foot buffer from any tributary from site disturbance. I wonder how this project would potentially impact that.
And something, just an overall note too, as this project moves forward, certainly would have to set up, an engineering escrow, attorney escrow, all this things will have to be reviewed, but certainly good feedback at this stage for the applicant. And, you know, if other board members, you know, can just continue to kind of, you know, should be more of a free talk to say, you know, concern about that, talk about, you know, general aesthetic, general placement, access, circulation, all of those things. You know, if you can provide feedback to the applicant at this stage would be beneficial. So not like, we're not going to have an answer on that tonight, but something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Your breakdown for the parking, again, I'm going back on that, conversation-wise, for the post office, because how did you calculate the parking? Did you include warehouse space versus, say, the sales space when it came to parking?
We did not include the warehouse space as a parking requirement for the post office. That was the sales and customer space.
Retail, basically?
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
In the lobby area. But keeping in mind too, that we also have 8 parking spaces dedicated for the postal vehicles set aside, on top of what we've calculated.
Thank you.
And you're not anticipating any parking waivers at this point? You've calculated it?
No, we don't, especially being a mixed-use development. All of these uses are standalone for the parking. You know, a lot of municipalities and a lot of engineers will propose, and traffic engineers will propose a reduction in parking because of mixed use, and there's a lot of tables that allow that. We're not proposing that at this time.
Is our building height capped at 30 feet? Yeah. 35? I noticed that the maximum height listed was 38, just over 38. That'd be something to consider going forward.
Okay. You want to speak?
The building height is, the peak of the building is 38. The way the zoning law calculates the height of a building, it takes the low point and the high point, and you take the average, and that becomes the height of the building. So if you take the high point and the low point, we're below the 35 feet maximum height.
Does that take into consideration that you're in a floodplain, and you got to go 3 feet above the floodplain? And that would be that starting surface?
It does. It's based on the finished grade around the building. Whether it's in the floodplain or not, it's the finished grade. So the measurement is done from the finished grade to the low and the high, and then you take the median. And then there's some exclusions on parts of the building that aren't even included in the height. Like a cupola, it might be argued that it's not part of the height. Appurtenances like that, architectural details and the like.
Okay, I would look into that. The surface, let's say existing right now, I think the floodplain is 12 inches above that.
It could be.
So your structure of this first floor would start 3 feet above that.
That is correct.
Okay, so
That's
just giving you
correct.
feedback if I may have it wrong, but that's what I've looked into.
Yeah, we would certify that the first floor elevation and all the mechanicals were at the proper level above the floodplain level.
And as far as impacting the building height, the grade around the building would be brought up that 3 feet to meet that finished floor elevation. So that would actually be your starting grade. So it would be the height from that grade, not the height from the existing grade before construction. The only time that would fall into a situation is if you were putting these up on stilts to get them out of the floodplain, which we're not.
Anyone else? Bob?
I'm concerned about traffic in front of the library as you are. Maybe speed bumps or something could be added to.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
look at that. You know, as I did state, we do want to throttle that down to one way. Probably at that location would be an excellent location for a speed table, where it throttles down to slow people down so they're not zipping, through and past in front of the library where people are traversing between the library and Orsini Park.
I guess the only concern that I saw was that this project proposes to effectively double the number of residential units on Park. I might have that figure incorrect because I didn't know how many were in the multifamily, but it seems like doubling potential traffic on that road, and that's definitely something to consider. I know you have three different ingress egress points, and one dedicated ingress. But that would definitely be something to consider.
Laurie? Simon?
Well, you did mention having an escrow for an engineering evaluation. I think there would be some concern about how this would impact flooding downstream on what I now understand to be School Creek. So we went through a tremendous amount of discussion on that with the last project we looked at was flooding potential. And we had the village engineer spend some time working that out. So I presume that that's going to happen again.
Yeah, we would be designing this in accordance with the New York State Stormwater Design Manual, the brand new one, which just came live in August, the 2024 edition. And, part of that would be, making sure that we're not discharging additional stormwater. They also have, points for runoff reduction, so you're actually reducing the amount of runoff off the site. This would fall under the redevelopment chapter, which used to be in Chapter 10. I'm not sure in the new one, since I've only been with it for a couple months now, if it's Chapter 10 or if they've changed the chapter number. But we'd be looking at this as a redevelopment because this is obviously a redevelopment parcel. And all of that criteria that DEC and EPA have set as standards would be followed.
Just a note to Simon's point from the last project, kind of much larger scale, but to the extent the applicant proposes, green infrastructure, certainly that was something the board was interested in last time as to, what different methods were being incorporated, so.
We will look at that, and actually, in the design manual and in the permit application, you actually have to go through a checklist of what you can and can't provide as far as green infrastructure. Obviously, DEC, that's one of their big forefronts, is to try to get as much green infrastructure out there as possible. Some of it's feasible, some of it's not. When they start talking about green roofs and things like that in this climate with snow loading, it's not quite as feasible as sometimes, depending on your soil conditions, porous asphalt or infiltration, things like that. But we look at all of that when we go through the design plan. I have proposed the bioretention basin because that is considered one of their preferred stormwater management that kind of falls in that area between permitted and green infrastructure, because it's similar to a rain garden except just on a larger scale. So all of that stuff we will be looking at and we'll be providing as much as possible.
Are you considering any additional trees or shrubbery to be planted on the property?
Yes, there'll be a substantial landscaping package that'll be involved with the design of this. We can't have these beautiful looking buildings without some nice landscaping around them.
When we went through this with the previous project, we got a list of preferred trees and shrubs from the Soil and Water Conservation Service. and we can give that to you.
I would absolutely absolutely love that. I'm quite familiar with most of the species that the SCS does request and specify that are non-invasive. Obviously, now you stay away from the Bradford pears and some of the other
Yeah.
more invasive species that have been brought over that are not suited for this location, and we will be, following that pretty closely. But I would appreciate if you can forward that list, and when we start to get to planning the landscaping, we'll make sure that we utilize it as much as
Yeah.
possible.
Steinberg, is it?
Steenberg.
Steenberg, I apologize. Have you had any preliminary discussion with the water district as far as water supply?
We have not at this point. We know that there are concerns with the water district. The post office is not for use of a pun, but it's a wash between the two because it's relocating existing services just to a larger building with larger storage. So we don't anticipate any issues with that because we'll be taking the others offline, but we'll be working with them to evaluate the system and any improvements that might be necessary if needed.
I don't have any more questions.
And then just general note about, the board's going to want to look at fire access and making sure our emergency vehicles can circulate. Yeah.
More so a question for the members on the board and council. The possibility of a area variance for the setback, would that require anything from the railroad?
Well, we have to, so long as it's not located within the railroad's right-of-way, if that's the type of right they have. We don't normally get any sort of permission from other
Okay.
property owners. but-
Did you mention that the library is at the same setback as the post office would be? Or within that?
They're within it, not at the
Fair-
same.
the variant,
but yeah.
okay.
And to your point, the railroad obviously would be noticed as part of the variance
Just an adjoining
notices,
owner, yeah.
like you would normally notice, but other than that, in my experience, I don't think they would have to be, we would need anything from the adjoining property owner. They would just be noticed as normal under any area variance application.
Yeah, my thought would be just as long as there's no improvement within some sort of right-of-way that they may have. Can you discuss a little more? I didn't completely catch. There's a parking lot that's not owned by the applicant?
Yes, this area here
Yeah.
is not under the applicant's ability to do anything like that. Actually is currently leased by the post office through 2028 for their existing parking lot. You can see it. I'm trying to talk loud because I didn't bring the microphone with me. It would be this area here. You can see the parking lot that they have adjacent to the post office.
But since you don't have it under control, it's not being used as any of the required
That
parking?
is correct. We haven't, we're not using it for any of this proposed development, nor have we included any of that parking within our parking calculations.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, anyone else on the board? Just information that they could use down the road, okay? Hearing nothing, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your
I have
input.
one more question, sorry. The residents in this mixed-use building, where would they park?
In the mixed-use building, they would utilize the parking along the rear,
okay.
if necessary. There's, again, it's a mixed-use development where you have shared parking. A lot of times, you know, the commercial uses are offset from the residential uses, so that's why. But
Okay, I apologize. Having nobody else, any feedback? Don, you raised your hand, yes.
I just have a question about the next steps in the procedure on where we go. I know there's a question on the use that was raised here tonight. How do we move forward with that question? And then, once that's issued, what would the next step be in terms of getting back before the board to continue with the process?
Yep. So since something's already been submitted to this board, I think this board can request that code interpretation.
Okay.
So based on the application that's been submitted, we would say, you know, are there any required variances or other relief that would be required from this board? So I think we have enough for that to be done by the code enforcement officer. Based on that, we would, you know, submit that to the applicant once the determination is made. Interpretation's made. The applicant could either accept that interpretation or appeal that interpretation. Assuming that it's accepted, then we would just look for a, you know, so you're either going to go to the village board for any sort of zoning amendment that may be needed, or you're going to make a determination to add additional variance requests to this application and get back before this board.
Okay. Very good.
And then I believe ask or petition the board for the escrow account to be created.
Yeah, I think we'll need to establish the escrow account either way for either the village board and this board, or this board alone.
So do we do that after the interpretation comes from the building inspector?
I think we should, just to know which boards are involved.
So I know where.
Yeah, which boards are involved, yep.
Sure.
Third time's a charm. Thank you, everybody.
thank you, we appreciate your input.
I'm not sure about zoning board meeting protocol, but do you open up the floor for public comment?
This is just a pre-concept hearing. There's no public hearing. There will be an opportunity for the public to chime in down the road.
Okay, so I can't speak tonight?
It's not an open to the public, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, all righty, we're going to move on with our business. Let me see, those are the minutes from... Okay, everybody look over the minutes for our July 23rd, 2024 meeting. And anybody see any changes that have to be made? No changes? Okay. So I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of July 23rd, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call. Freeman.
Approved.
Simon Litton.
Approved.
Prince.
Approved.
Sullivan.
In favor?
Trout.
Approve.
Whitham, sorry.
In favor.
And myself, Ramirez, in favor. Okay, any other business in front of the board that you want to discuss, come up with? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Who was that, Nick?
Oh, I know, we live right on Maple.
Chuck, okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Freeman? Approved. Litton? Approved. Prince?
Approved.
Sullivan?
In favor?
Trout?
Approve.
Whitham?
In favor.
And myself in favor. Thank you, everyone.
Next meeting.
Let me, Don, before you step out, the next meeting is December 17th. It's the third week of December, FYI, okay?
Okay.
Not the fourth week, because of the holidays.
Is that the night we're going to get approval?
Put it on your Christmas list.
Thank you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just shut off the mics.